the Watchers in the New Testament. With our video series on the Watchers and the book of Enoch, we're seeing that the Watchers, a group of angels, have a very significant place in the book of Enoch and are referenced in the New Testament. Today we're going to take a look at those places in some detail. Now, in First Enoch, the stories of the Watchers are related pretty thoroughly, including their sin, their activities, and their punishment. We're not going to look into that today. We're going to focus on what the New Testament says about it. But they came to earth and indulged in forbidden activities for which they were punished by God. And today we're going to look at the places where the New Testament writers touched on this in some detail. The first one is 2 Peter 2:4. In 2 Peter 2, it talks about the angels that had sinned. Now, it just says the angels that sinned. They're not talking about the Watchers in particular, but we know that this is who Peter is writing about. If God did not spare the angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell or into the underworld and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until the judgment. Now, when he talks about casting them into hell, there are a variety of translations, but the Greek here is not a word that is used elsewhere for hell, which is usually Hades, the afterlife, the underworld, but it's Tartarus. It's a form of the word Tartarus, which in the thought of peoples in those days, especially Greek thought, was considered to be the worst of the worst, the lowest of the low places in the underworld. You go down below Hades and you've got Tartarus, which is the place of greatest darkness. You might call it the valley of the shadow of death. And only the worst offenders were sent to Tartarus. This is what 2 Peter 2:4 is talking about, committing them to chains of gloomy darkness until the judgment. So they are pent up in prison waiting this. So he cast them down and committed them to darkness. The second we'll look at is similar in Jude verse 6. The angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling, he has kept in eternal chains of gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. Now, the angels, again, are not named, but they are the Watchers. They did not stay within their own position of authority, the place of power and dominion, and the place that God had assigned them to work. They were assigned there, and they were there for some period of time until they decided to rebel. They left their position of authority and sinned. Their punishment was to be kept in chains of gloomy darkness until the judgment. This is very serious business. And the third is 1 Peter 3:18. This is in the middle of a discussion by Peter on baptism and other matters, the ministry of Christ, and it has puzzled commentators for a long time. As the book of Enoch has become better known and more scholars are studying it and putting pieces together, this interpretation is becoming widely accepted. And I would say that even if the commentators are not thrilled about it, which is to say thrilled about Peter referring to an extra biblical book, most scholars and commentators are in agreement that basically Peter here is describing part of the story of the Watchers in the book of Enoch, and I'll read that. Christ suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the spirit. Now, chapter 3, verse 19. In which he went and made a proclamation to the spirits in prison who formerly did not obey. Now, the spirits who formerly did not obey would be the Watchers in 1 Enoch chapters 6 through 10. Proclamation to the spirits in prison, that's a puzzling matter. King James Version, which is what many people learned on for generations, he preached to the spirits in prison, and that puzzled people. Well, was he preaching salvation to whose spirits? Well, it's pretty clear at this point, with more recent scholarship in the past 50 to 100 years, that the spirits in prison are the watchers, as described in 2 Peter 2 and Jude 6. And the proclamation which he made had something to do with his victory and with God the Father having in place the remainder of his plan to right all the wrongs of the watchers. God was preparing the final phase of the plan to set right upon the earth all the things that went wrong by the actions and sins of the watchers. And Christ went to the spirits in prison and proclaimed, you've been under sentence here for a long time, but the day is getting closer when the final judgment will come. I am going to rise from the dead. And once I set in place the church going into all the world, preaching the gospel, bringing people into the church of God, bringing the nations into the fold, and changing the world, everything will be wrapped up and the final judgment will come. And the final judgment upon you, spirits in prison, who rebelled against Almighty God, the Lord of hosts, your final judgment is coming closer starting now. So this is very, very exciting stuff, actually. I remember many years ago listening to preachers wonder aloud, wow, the preaching to the spirits in prison, who were they? What was going on here? Well, I am telling you what's going on. So to sum up, in 1 Peter, 2 Peter, and Jude, what you have is references without the word watchers or Enoch being mentioned. But when you do the study, as I've done, and you look at all of the data and you look at the literature that's involved, it's very clear that the book of Enoch figured in these three places in the New Testament, and the watchers themselves are referred to in a slightly veiled fashion in these places in the New Testament. And I encourage you, go ahead and study. Study the New Testament. Study 1 Peter, 2 Peter, and Jude. Study the book of Enoch, especially chapters 6 through 10. You'll see this, and I think you'll agree, do your own research, that yes, the watchers do appear in the New Testament. And one of the reasons we're doing these videos is to make it pretty clear that extra-canonical, there are various words for them, intertestamental, Second Temple literature, this literature was widely read, widely studied and discussed, and it influenced the New Testament writers very deeply. We see three places where that effect can be seen right now. We encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Look around for content on Enoch, the Watchers, angels, demons, spiritual warfare, deliverance. There's a lot of stuff there you can't find elsewhere. And we hope to see you again. God bless you.